Dr. Michael Shermer es el editor fundador de la revista Escéptico, director ejecutivo de la Sociedad de Escépticos y profesor adjunto de Economía en Claremont Graduate University, uno de los principales portavoces a favor del tratamiento científico racional de las cuestiones de la fe y lo desconocido. El nuevo libro de Shermer es el volumen final de una trilogía que inició con ¿Por qué la gente cree en cosas raras? Y continuó con How We Believe, ¿Cómo creemos? Un análisis crítico de los sistemas de creencias religiosas y sus fundamentos. Aspira a demostrar que no necesitamos a Dios en lo absoluto para ser seres humanos morales y que en realidad la evolución humana ha construido una tendencia hacia el comportamiento moral en nuestros cerebros.
Una mente brillante, una mente que escribe, que cuestiona, una mente que provoca, una mente que nos hace pensar. Ese es Michael Shermer, nuestro invitado de hoy a este importante programa de diálogos con la ciudad de las ideas, donde aquí en Proyecto 40. Michael Shermer además es el director de una revista que tiene un gran número de fans, se llama El Escéptico. Ustedes, por ejemplo, a veces se han atrevido o les ha provocado leer su horóscopo, han creído en videntes, en la cuija, en fantasmas, en el más allá. Michael Shermer no cree nada de ello. Michael Shermer es una persona que apuesta en la ciencia. De hecho, cree que muchos de estos mitos, como él le llama, son muy peligrosos para la humanidad. La idea es evolucionar. Para Michael Shermer, no te creas todo lo que piensas, no solamente es una frase más, es un axioma de vida. Acompáñenos en la casa de Michael Shermer a entender una mente brillante. Michael Shermer. It's really an honor to be here with you. Thank you very much, Michael. So we should start the game. I will start with the letter A.
Okay.
And whenever you want, you just say stop, okay?
Okay.
Vamos a empezar el juego de basta con el gran científico y maestro Michael Shermer. A.
Alto.
Alto. K. K.
Okay.
What's the question? You have 30 seconds.
Oh, the baloney detection kit, the kit. It is a little publication we put together on how to detect baloney, that is nonsense or BS.
And what's the
well,
trick?
the trick is just to ask certain questions like, how do you know this is true? Who says that this is true? What's the evidence for this? How does that evidence fit with the way we know the world works? Has there been any independent corroboration of that claim? Is it just made by this one person, or does somebody else also corroborate it? What's the background of this person? What's the context in which they're saying this? So the baloney detection kit is really for students, for teachers, for adults, for parents, for all of us on how to think critically about weird things.
Great, time is over. Okay, I will start now with K. K.
Okay, alto.
Alto. N.
Okay. Well, the answer is both. Obviously, we're both selfish and selfless. We're cooperative, we're competitive, we're greedy and nasty, we're generous and nice. It depends on the context. We evolved a human nature that has moral emotions. So we feel guilty when we violate a social contract, and we feel good when we help somebody. So we have both of those capacities, and that's part of being a social primate in a social group. The idea is to structure society in a way that brings out the generous, nice part of human nature and attenuates or knocks back the bad part.
I will start with N.
Yes? Okay. Alto.
Alto. Q.
Quirkology is our latest issue on the study of quirky things, and this is our friend Richard Wiseman, who you should invite to your big conference. He's a really clever experimental psychologist on like how to test quirky things, like why is it that people named fish are more likely to become ichthyologists that study fish, or somebody named Dennis is more likely to become a dentist. I mean, that's a quirky, weird thing.
Okay.
Or like if you tell somebody that you're going to take through an empty house that it's haunted, they're more likely to have feelings like there's something spooky in the house. Versus if you just tell somebody we're going to remodel this house, how do you feel about it? and they won't get the feelings that it's haunted.
It has to do with self-prophecies.
That's
okay.
right, yeah. So your expectations pretty much influence the way you perceive the world.
Pues yo creo en las dos cosas, en el bien y en el mal, porque el mal también existe, el bien también existe, y eso depende de cada uno de nosotros, pues hacer el bien o hacer el mal también.
Creo en el bien, creo que todos los seres humanos somos buenos, dependiendo de circunstancias externas del medio ambiente, de la sociedad, es cuando alguien puede actuar mal.
Bueno, el bien y el mal pues es muy subjetivo, lo que para mí puede estar bien, para otra persona puede estar mal.
Another letter. Q de se basta.
Okay, and alto.
D.
The devil really is just it's a metaphor for evil things. I mean, I think the human brain is constructed in such a way that we tend to see the world in black and white, up and down, binary systems, yes and no, and good and evil. So good and evil on one side is good, God, and the other side is the devil and bad. And so I think the devil represents in literature and mythology the dark side of human nature, the bad things that happen out in the world. And the danger is taking it literally, like there's actually somebody out there, because obviously there's not. Or there's something in here, like Osama bin Laden has a demon in him that makes him innately evil.
How could you explain to the people that we have been believing that kind of things for many, many years? And it's part, I don't know if you have read this book, that the God gene, or it could be the evil gene.
I don't think it's in our genes so much as the tendency to impart agency to unseen things. That is, to look for some cause that such that everything has to be explained by some cause. That's normal. Mm-hmm. That's called learning. We try to connect A to B and so on. But what do you do when you can't explain it? So we often invent invisible things, spirits, animism, gods and demons and so on. So it's a way of imparting agency to something else that makes it real so that we can respond to it.
D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q,
alto.
R, S. S, here we have S.
Skeptic is not like I am a skeptic, therefore I believe nothing. I mean, I believe all sorts of things. I believe in gravity and evolution and so forth. And so it's just a way of asking questions. It's like the baloney detection. It's like a science by nature is skeptical. It begins with the null hypothesis that whatever you think is true is not true. Now you prove that it is. Mm-hmm. And that's the default assumption. And so science is naturally conservative in that regard because there's so many claims that are made, most of which are wrong. You have to assume it's not true and then go from there.
La clonación, aparte de que representa un avance tecnológico muy importante, bueno, científico más bien, creo que puede ser muy útil para salvar vidas, para mejorar la condición de vida, pero también que viola muchos valores morales.
Clonar a un humano se me hace algo tonto, ya que pues con los mismos pensamientos que nosotros tenemos hacia la gente, imagínate un clon que piensa igual que nosotros. Y en los animales creo que también se me hace una tontería, ya que para eso existe la naturaleza tal cual.
Para mí la clonación es algo positivo siempre y cuando se utilice en aspectos científicos que beneficien al ser humano.
S. T, V, W, X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Could be C or could be CH.
I don't have any problems with cloning because we already accept identical twins. as having two separate identities, two souls, if you believe in souls, or metaphorically speaking, there's two individuals there. And so the fear people have is that we will make parts out of a clone. Well, that's already against the law, so you can't do that. Or somebody would want to have themselves cloned. But surveys show that almost nobody wants to do that. Really, the reason I encourage research into cloning is because it can lead to medical technologies to solve genetic diseases, and the lead to the creation of stem cells and things like that. Well, again, that's part of our nature to selfishly see if we can get away with something and try to violate social norms in a selfish way that gives us a little bit of an edge over our competition. So if it's a game in which there's parameters and rules and so on, in order to prevent cheating, you have to have strict enforcement of the rules. Rules have to be really clear and strictly enforced with strong punishments. And then people won't cheat. It's only when you don't have a rule of law in a society, or you don't have a clearly defined set of rules in a game, like baseball, for example, that you can or can't use this performance-enhancing drug, then that's when the cheating happens. Because like in a game theory model where the whole point is to win, so if one person starts to do this, cheat a little bit and gets away with it, then everybody else has to do it in order to keep up, and then the whole thing falls apart. Self-deception is part of human nature, yeah. But the whole point of the scientific method and the peer review system is that if you don't find and catch your own lies, somebody else will. Okay. And usually with great glee in a public forum to expose you, because science is a very competitive enterprise. And so if you can knock somebody down by showing that they're wrong or self-deceived, then that's even better for you. So there's a kind of ethic in science that forces you to look for your own self-deceptions and biases and agendas.
I will go now with the letter E, F, G, H,
I,
J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, V. Okay, V.
Well, voodoo science is just another way of saying junk science or pathological science or bad science or pseudoscience. It's just another way of describing when science goes wrong. So it's not exactly like the paranormal. It's that somebody's making a claim that has a scientific basis to it, or it sounds like it's supposed to be scientific, and when you look into it, it isn't. And so like cold fusion is an example of science gone bad. Cold fusion, the claim was made in a press conference before there was any experimental corroboration by other laboratories that cold fusion was real. And so as soon as it was announced, then other labs tried to replicate the results, couldn't replicate it, and that was the end of that. So cold fusion became an example of voodoo science or bad science.
Well, here we also have B y W, W.
Well, this is mostly an American thing because race is a big culturally sensitive issue here. It isn't a big issue in other countries. And it has to do with, I think, our past and also the natural human tendency the tribal tendency to group people into different categories. And we do this anyway, even if there were no racial differences, but skin color differences are really easy to see. So it's easy to catalog people and then differentiate them hierarchically, such that some are better than others.
Is there a myth that, for example, in basketball, most of the best players or the best runners are Afro-Americans?
Well, in basketball, it used to be, before blacks got into the sport, it was the belief that Jews were better. Jews were somehow innately superior at basketball because of their cunningness. And that was sort of a way of isolating Jews and separating them. Then when blacks got into it, then it became sort of a black sport. Now what's happening is that there's Asians, Chinese, and Eastern Europeans are getting into the sport. And now the sport is shifting again. There's different styles of play. So it's not that one is better than the other.
I will do a little bit of cheating, talking about cheating, because this topic relates me with another one, yes, that I was reading in this book, The Borderlands of Science, which has to do with another myth, and it's the Mozart genius myth.
Well, what I call the Mozart effect is that somehow creative genius comes from on high, like a spark in the brain, a light bulb goes off from somewhere else. That's in some way inexplicable by the normal means of how the rest of us go about becoming accomplished in something, just hard work and practice. And the myth is, I'm busting that myth by saying, no, actually, if you look at Mozart's own life, yes, of course, he's naturally gifted, but that he had an extensive background in music. His father was a musician. His whole social circle were musicians. He started writing and playing music at the age of 3. So by the time he became famous in his late teens, he had already had 15 years of practice. That's a lot. So I call this the 10,000 hour rule, that you have to put in, it takes about 10,000 hours to master a new skill. You know, if you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a scientist, whatever, that's, 10,000 hours. That's about what it takes to train.
I will choose another one that for me has to do a lot with the question of God. I don't remember exactly where I put it, but I would like to, I think it was here.
You can just ask me.
Yes, perfect, sure, you're right. It is actually this one. God, I mean, there's a big debate. We're inviting you to debate actually at Idea City. I hope Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris could help us. And you two against other two great thinkers at the idea of God, the question of God. What's the debate about?
Well, on one level, the debate's about the nature of reality. Is there actually a God or not? And if there is, what's the evidence for it? What are the claims that people make for God's existence? And then we debate that. The other part of the debate, though, is belief in God. Why do people believe in God? Why does anybody believe in God? Is it in our genes? Is it in our evolutionary heritage? Is it just in our culture? Why do people believe, in God? So those are sort of the two levels of the debate. I'm a skeptic. I'm a religious skeptic. I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist.
I am a religious skeptic.
A religious skeptic, yeah.
Are you an atheist or you are no theist?
Yeah, well, as a statement about the universe, I'm an agnostic. That is, it's not knowable. There's no scientific experiment we're ever going to run to settle the issue. Simply because God, the conception of God that most people have is that it's a supernatural entity. And if it's supernatural, then the natural sciences can't really know God. That's why they're called the natural sciences. Yeah. Okay, so that sort of ends the debate right there.
How do you explain to the people who says that the Holocaust never happened, and why do they say it?
Well, there's a group of mostly Americans, although now this movement is spreading into the Middle East, Arab countries, Turkey, anywhere
even
where
Latin
there's
America,
anywhere where there's some anti-Jewish sentiment, a little anti-Semitism, this will flourish because the Holocaust itself is a moral leverage that gives it's sort of the ultimate victim's claim to power. This is how they think. Mm-hmm. So if they can remove that moral leverage by saying, you know what, it never happened, so you don't have that moral leverage, and furthermore you lied, made it up, it's a conspiracy, then that reverses the moral power. So it's mostly driven by anti-Semites. People don't like Jews. They fear that Jews have too much power, too much political power. Like in America, it's one of the smallest groups there are, and yet they have a disordinate number of like Nobel Prizes and books published.
But how can you show to them that they are wrong?
Well, they make 3 specific claims. It wasn't 6 million that died, it was more like maybe 1 or 2 million. That they didn't die in gas chambers, they died of natural starvation, disease, war, and therefore there was no intentional plan to exterminate the Jews. We know what the numbers are because there's been enough studies of populations in various villages, towns throughout Europe, so the number really is between 5 and 6 million. We have the blueprint plans for the construction of gas chambers and crematoria that were way beyond the use for just delousing clothing and disposing of dead bodies from disease. And we have lots of paperwork from the Nazis themselves of how they systematically planned at some point, probably by 1942, to eradicate all Jews in Europe.
Well, with the letter A, AIDS, skeptics.
AIDS skeptics, yes. Well, here's an example of skepticism gone awry. That is, there are people who claim that HIV does not cause AIDS. So they're called the AIDS skeptics or HIV/AIDS skeptics. They think AIDS is caused by something else. Well, we have overwhelming evidence now that HIV is what causes AIDS. AIDS is a set of symptoms of other diseases that kill you. It's HIV that breaks the immune system down such that then these other diseases kill you. So AIDS itself isn't a disease. It's a set of symptoms that's caused by HIV, and then you die from those set of symptoms. So they're claiming that there is no causal connection. There is. But the reason I think this is an interesting case study is because people say, oh, skeptics, they don't believe anything like the HIV/AIDS or the Holocaust deniers. No, we believe the Holocaust happened. We believe that HIV causes AIDS. We believe that evolution is true. We believe that Einstein was right about relativity, and so on. So skeptics don't just not believe things.
Debido al tiempo, we'll choose just 2 letters, please.
Well, we have to do zoo.
Sí.
Z, Z.
Yes. La Z
for
de
zoo.
The human animal. You remember this book of Desmond Morris?
Desmond Morris, yeah,
That's
classic.
why I put it, el humano.
Yeah.
Why Darwin Matters? People have to know this.
They do, because Darwin matters because evolution matters. Evolution is the most preeminent explanation, most well-supported, all-encompassing explanation for life. The diversity of life, how it got here, who we are, where we fit into nature. And 150 years after the fact, the theory continues to be well-supported, even by technologies and sciences that didn't even exist in Darwin's day, like genetics. There was no genetics in Darwin's day. And every experiment ever run on genetics supports Darwin's theory of evolution. If it didn't, then the theory would be in trouble, but it isn't. So Darwin matters because evolution matters, and evolution matters because science matters. I mean, it is the preeminent story of who we are, and therefore science is our myth, our story, our origins tale of where we came from and where we're going. So in that sense of myth-making, which is what we do as a species, science is our story. Oh, well, I guess applying science to all areas and having no sacred cows. I suppose the most controversial is religion, because in America, so many people, well, in Mexico too, so Catholic, probably religion is the most sensitive thing we do. And since 9/11, it has become the single topic that everybody wants to talk about. And this account, I mean, I wrote my books on God and religion before 9/11. And they did okay, but the conversation wasn't as elevated as it was after 9/11. So books by Dawkins and Harris, Hitchens, Dennett, and so forth, they've hit a different culture, a culture that's very concerned about extreme religion. And so now it's okay to talk about religion, and that's a good thing. And so here skepticism is now becoming very politically important, religiously important. It matters.
Thank you very much, Michael. Really, it's an honor to meet you. If somebody wants to subscribe to any of your magazines, what?
Oh, they just go to skeptic.com.
Perfect.
www.skeptic.com.
Excellent. Michael, again, muchas gracias.
Okay, muchas gracias.
Thank you. Gracias por acompañarnos una vez más a este programa de la Ciudad de las Ideas, dialogando y diálogos con las ideas. Como ustedes lo han reconocido, o para los que se sintonizan por primera vez, hemos estado en Harvard, hemos estado en Berkeley, ahora estuvimos en Los Ángeles en la casa de Michael Shermer. ¿Qué les pareció el juego? Es que ¿cómo sacarle tanta información a un personaje que es escrito de tantos libros? Pues solamente con un tipo de juego como es el de Basta. Una gran creatividad e ingenuidad con la que nos responde a cada una de las preguntas Michael Shermer. Pero si lo quiere conocer de viva voz, acompáñenos del 6 al 8 de noviembre a la ciudad de Puebla, a este importante festival de mentes brillantes, la Ciudad de las Ideas. www.ciudadelasideas.com o márquenos al 01800 01 Ideas. Poder Cívico, su organización ciudadana, convoca. Muchas gracias.
La Ciudad de las Ideas, un festival sin precedentes, agradece el apoyo a las siguientes empresas socialmente responsables.